Hey guys. All right. I'm going to try to make this one quick, but I feel like every time I've ever said that, the video ends up 40 minutes. I'm going to make this one long. Let's see if that works the opposite. All right. Reporting stuff. That's where I'm going with this. So I've been talking to Andreas a lot last week, really, carrying over the weekend. And basically, yeah, really valuing his feedback because he's able to give me some very blunt, honest feedback, being in the inner workings of the team. Whereas, my perspective is, well, ideally, I'm like super zoomed out, looking at everything big picture going on. But that means I need to be relying on you guys to give me insight into the more close-knit details of what's going on. So anyway, lots of chatter, lots of good feedback about like various holes, inefficiencies, or like stresses going on. And so one of those things that he communicated is like one of the major like emotional toxicities comes from not being congruent on expectations of how long some tasks or projects should take, which eventually turns into, I'm just going to use, everything I'm going to communicate now is more, it's like hypothetical. So like, let's pretend that Andreas has been running into issues with some of his tasking and it ends up taking a lot longer than I would have thought it would. Well, if there's no communication system that helps me understand that his tasking has some reason as to why it's taking a lot longer, I'm going to sit there and be like, Andreas, what the fuck, man? Like, either I'm going to verbalize this or it's just going to be in my head. Either way, it's bad. What the hell's going on, man? And it's going to demotivate both of us. So even if I don't even share these thoughts, it's going to demotivate me. And then no matter what, even if I'm not sharing the thoughts, people feel, this kind of stuff. And then also even for him, if there's an expectation that a task should take like an hour, but ends up it takes him 5, he loses that sense of fulfillment from just, crushing tasking. So we need a communication system that makes sure that everyone's on the same page with how long tasking should take, and then anytime there's deviation from that for any reason, there's then a communication system about that. Because when Andreas actually shared some of those, I asked him to come up with specific scenarios, and he came up with, a few just like small situations. Pretty much in every one of those situations, there were a couple results. One could be, well, we're clearly lacking an SOP. We need to create an SOP. There's a hole that we need an SOP. Okay, let's create a task to create that SOP. Or, oh man, I didn't think of that. Like, there's technology out there. There's apps or whatever that could do that way faster. Let's look for those apps. Or, oh man, there's a third-party service that could do that. Let's hire that. Or, you know what? Maybe we should build like a database or a spreadsheet. That'll really help that for, doing these tasks in the future. Or this actually wasn't a scenario, but it could be. It's like, oh, you know what? You're bottlenecked by that person, and that person is clearly fucking off. There's an attitude issue with that person. Maybe we need to go talk to that person, or maybe this has been an ongoing thing, and we just need to finally remove that person. Or another one. Or, you know what? There's a better way to do that. This is actually a really common one. There's a better way to do that tasking. Let me teach you. That's a really common one. And that's what I was talking about before with we want to have like mentors in the team. So there's probably even a couple more scenarios. I'm obviously just like speaking from my mind. There's like a couple other things that can arise once you identify, hey, tasking expectation and tasking actuality are not in congruency. So anyway, that was one of the things that we talked about. And there was several others, but to keep this a little shorter, The game plan is to let's start rolling out our new reporting systems. So I communicated this to LJ and Harmony yesterday via Voxer. LJ drafted up rough draft SOP. I need to go through it today. I asked the rest of Harmony to also take a look at it. We should have the final draft for you guys either later today or tomorrow. But ultimately, the gist is we're going to be doing at the individual level. So we're going to have two types of reports. Individual reporting, in which every single individual does a report. Really, it's like an update. Report sounds like stressful. Like it's a communication system, a communicative update on a weekly basis about the whole perspective of what's going on at the individual level. The second style of reporting is at the project level. That's not what I'm talking about in this video. So anyway, what we're going to do is every single individual, every Monday by basically we'll say probably 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. local time. So if you're in the Philippines, it's 3 p.m., 4 p.m. your time. If you're in Florida, 3 p.m., 4 p.m. your time. India, 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. your time. So local time, that's when the due date will be to do what'll for now be a Loom. We are definitely going to migrate away from Loom. We're still figuring out exactly what that platform's going to be, but for now it's going to be a Loom, a screencast Loom, with the little window so that your face is there, in which you go through your previous week's Asana and your upcoming week's Asana. I kind of skipped a step here. So something that we're going to also do in our Asana tasking moving forward is anytime you get tasked in Asana, including if I'm voxing and I say, hey, create yourself a task for blah, blah, blah. Or sometimes I don't even specifically say that. If a deliverable or an ask is communicated, that needs to then go into Asana. And we actually have SOP where you're then supposed to post a link to your Asana, either in the Slack channel where that's communicated or the Voxer. We have not been doing that. We need to do that. LJ, could you make sure that gets included into the Asana SOP? Because we've not been doing that, but we ought to be. Anyway, once you create that Asana, you look at that task yourself and then put in brackets at the end of your Asana title your expectation of how long that task or project should take. If you're wrong, it's not a huge deal. This shouldn't be a stressful thing. From there, once we have all that, so every single Asana should have that in there. Then anyone that's looking at your tasking, whether it's really anyone, if they see something and oh man, how are you going to be able to do that fast? I also do that task. Teach me. That could be a conversation that comes up. Or on the flip side, oh, I think I know a way to do that a lot faster. Let me teach you. Either way, that's awesome. So that's a little ancillary benefit. But the primary purpose here is in the videos that you do, the reporting videos that I was talking about a second ago. When you go through your screencast of your Asana, that's what you're going to, basically everyone's going to be able to see what your time projections are for your week ahead. So that's half the video. And then the other half of the video, actually the first half of the video will be a reflection phase. You're looking at the week previous. So again, these videos are due on Mondays. So you're going to be reflecting on your previous week, and you're going to be comparing what the projected time was to what the actual time ended up being. And if you found something that saved you time, then you're going to communicate that. And I'm not talking about you shaved off 15%. I'm talking about when there's big gaps, because sometimes that happens. Andreas shared something that he thought was going to be a 15-minute task and it ended up being 5 hours. Talking about the big gaps. I mean, that's a really big gap. It doesn't have to be that big, but the big gaps. So if you shave time, definitely communicate that, because that's going to get turned into either resource or training material or whatever, just shared wisdom amongst the team. But I think in most cases, it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be something took you longer. And so when you communicate that, that's when we're going to be having this mindset. Is there a mentorship opportunity where the person can be like, you can be taught something in how to do things more efficient or effective? Is there some way that we can automate some part of this, whether it's through a third-party software or our own team, like building Google Sheet stuff, or whatever. So basically, like, is there mentorship? Is there tech that can be improved? Does personnel need improvement? Is there SOP that needs to be written? One I forgot before is templates. So sometimes it's like, oh, well, if this is a repeated task, let's create a template, which is kind of in line with SOP, but still a little different. So basically we have this like metaphysical thought process going on while listening to the situation of what happened. Why did this task take so much longer? Now, the ideal situation is the person communicating this will have the awareness of being like, look, this is what happened, and therefore we need to create a template, or therefore we need to have support, or we need to, I know of this other third-party software that we should probably get. That's the ideal situation, but not everyone's going to have that level of awareness or knowledge. So at the very least, it's the communication of the problem so that someone else can metaphysically think through, okay, what's actually going, you're telling me this specific example, what's the actual bigger picture thing going on, and how can we remedy this in the future? So that's what these videos are going to be about. So it's going to be minimum of 3 minutes. Every video must be at least 3 minutes. And the reason is because if it's less than 3 minutes, then to me that means that you're not building out your Asana tasking in a detailed enough way where you have really enough to communicate on. So if you're just saying like, did primary images, that was one of the things that Andreas is working on. Did Amazon primary images, 20 hours. That's like super, kind of like you're just not even trying, I guess. You're not getting the whole point of why we're doing this. You'll be more communicative about the actual primary images that you did, a little bit of a breakdown. I mean, you could say like, hey, I did 20 primary images. It took me about 30 hours. Here's the breakdown of all the ones that I did. And there's nothing else to really talk about. That's cool, but there might be a situation where it's like, these ones actually took me a lot longer because, FYI, we did not have any, like, I had to start from complete scratch, or I couldn't find the files, or I had to wait on a designer. I mean, this would probably be a designer that's communicating this. Maybe if you're a designer, you had to be like, well, I didn't know what copy to put in there, and I had to wait on copy, or like all these like little situations. And we want to communicate that stuff because it's like, oh shit, you had to wait on a copywriter. Okay, why did you have to wait on a copywriter? Did it get tasked out appropriately? Was one of our copywriters sick, and then we didn't have a redundancy in place to be able to like create a catch? How big of a deal is that? It allows for us to ask all these questions to then improve efficiency thereafter. So 3 to 5 minutes. Don't be longer than 5 minutes. You have to, you can't be too verbose. Like, I'm terrible at that. My videos are always long as shit. I am a terrible example of being concise. So don't be me. But 3 to 5 minutes. The first part of your video is reflecting on the previous week's Asana tasks. Talk about anything that can create excitement. That's like number one. If there's something that you did that can create positivity for the team, talk about that. Big wins, big shout outs, like, I was able to do this because Andreas was a fucking rock star and he crushed it, and that's awesome. So like, if you can throw positivity, that's like number one. Talk about positivity, talk about wins. But if you ran into obstacles, and that's, basically your obstacles are going to be communicated through the lack of congruency between the expectation of time and the reality of time. Because in reality, if the two were the same, if you took as long as you expected to take, then you probably didn't hit any obstacles, right? So really focus on the taskings that you hit snares in, and then you're going to go to the week ahead and basically say where you're expecting support, like where you think you're going to need support, tasking that okay, look, I did this task a couple weeks ago and we ran into issues. I don't know if those issues have been solved. These were the issues. Hopefully they're resolved. Blah, 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 blah. This is your planning phase. Again, remember how I'm trying to build everything into a system where it's like reflection and projection, or reflection and planning. That's what we're trying to do here. This is what high-powered people do. So, you're planning ahead, and that's why it's also due on a Monday, because you're planning your week out. You're looking at everything ahead of you, and you're mapping it out in your head. You're right. From the previous week, any tasking that you had to push to the following week or further, that should get communicated, and why. If you had to push a Tuesday task just to Thursday, it's probably not worth getting communicated. It's really just if it was expected to be completed the previous week, but you couldn't for any reason, then communicate about that. And a little side note here, that's another thing that we're trying to do to create autonomy and more freedom in our culture and in our organizational structure is it is always acceptable to push your Asana tasking so long as it's not what I've used like hard due date. So we also need to make sure that's written in our SOP, LJ. Whenever Asana tasking is created, it needs to be quantified or measured in terms of, is this due date strict? Is it highly preferred? Is it totally soft and it's like, it'd be great if it's done in 2 weeks, but if you take a month, fuck it, whatever. Or is it a reminder task where there's not really even an expectation to work on it? We just don't want to forget about the idea. So we set the reminder date for a month from now. Once that pops back up, it just starts a conversation. Hey guys, the reminder task, it just popped up. Are we ready to work on this, or should I kick it out another month? Fuck it, kick it out another month. Okay, sweet, kick it out another month. So those are 4 categories of tiering our Asana tasks. So every Asana task needs to have that. And every Asana task now needs to have the expected time commitment for it. Okay, jumping back to the report. Sorry guys, I'm a little all over the place. That's why we're gonna have these SOPs clearly written out. So back to the second half of the report where you're projecting ahead. Focus on anything that you expect to also take you a long time, which is gonna be clearly mapped out there. Talk a little bit about it, because basically what you're saying is, hey, this is going to take me a lot of my investment, my time, my attention, my energy, and perhaps even my stress. So I want to bring attention to that, because anyone who's watching, either A, you can be emotionally supportive, B, you can be supportive, maybe you have ideas that can help me out here, or C, at the very least, you can be mindful of the fact that I have this huge project to do. If you work with me, or, if you, whatever it is, just know that I have a lot of focus going on here, especially if it's like a hard due date or something like that. And then the final piece of this, which I guess we'll wait for SOP, because I don't know if this should go into the video report, because we're also going to do a written report. That way we can have a little bit better of a record, and the written report will be really concise. We need to talk about our emotional well-being a little bit. So there are so many times in this team where we generate anxiety and feelings of being overwhelmed. And the reason is because we don't have that normal vertical hierarchy where a person is always listening to one person that's creating tasking. In those systems, that one, if Andreas is in a corporate system, my manager, my boss, then I'm just always looking up to him. What's my tasking? And he's the only one giving me tasking, so he's aware of what my tasking is. If he's a good manager, he's always aware of what my tasking is. In the NOVAEO system, with the pod system, we're trying to be more decentralized in order to create more freedom and more autonomy. And this is going to become more apparent as we grow and we rewrite our systems and stuff. You might get tasking from yourself. You might see your own ideas and create your own tasking. You might get ideas from Derek. Tasking from Derek. You might get tasking from me. You might get tasking from whomever, right? And when those taskings come in, they don't necessarily know who else is tasking you. So they don't necessarily know what's on your plate. And that's also why when you talk about like, when you create tasking, you gotta say like soft, hard, whatever, because it gives the person who's receiving the tasking flexibility to build their own schedule. If it's hard due dates, then, they gotta try their best to meet like wherever those taskings landed. It's hard due date of Wednesday this week, try really hard to. But if I have a bunch of soft tasking in there, I can rearrange my schedule. Like, you know what? I really wanted to go to, like baseball game on Tuesday. So let me move around some of these soft taskings and stack up, my Thursday and my Monday and shit like that. That's what we're trying to achieve. Because these are all soft taskings, so it doesn't really matter. I'm going to move shit around. That's what we're trying to get to. More autonomy, more freedom. But when we do that, and when we have different people creating the taskings, it can create that feeling of being overwhelmed or anxiety, because you're like, holy fuck, man, I have so many people that are just sending me so much tasking, and they're not even talking to each other. They don't know what I'm working on, blah, 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 blah. So there's a lot of times where we have anxiety and being overwhelmed in this team. These systems I've communicated in this video will really help alleviate that. But nonetheless, let's be aware of the negative emotions that exist in the team. And awareness comes from communication. Well, first you have to be aware of it yourself, and then we need to communicate that outward so that we can create remedy for it. And that's a big part of what Harmony's role is meant to be, is to ensure that every single individual on the team is like super fulfilled and super excited and super inspired and passionate. And that's why we have these systems that, in all honesty, feel a little bit cheesy, a little bit corny. Like the Harmony one-on-ones. Those are meant to be for those of you that can't just like speak your mind when it happens, I'm really stressed and, angry at Brandon or whatever. I mean, Harmony's meant to be there to be like, okay, tell me about it. What's up? We have these like the one-on-ones, which is meant to be like forced, which I know I don't really like force, but we need to have it for those people that can't just vent on their own. That way they're like, okay, yeah, I've been pretty stressed for a while because, Brandon sucks. So these systems are pretty corny when you write them, but they actually have a significant amount of intention behind them. It's not just to be cheesy, because at the end of the day, the NOVAEO bottom line is not profit. The NOVAEO bottom line is fulfillment. It's happiness. It's progression. So I communicated before that I feel like the equation for happiness is being fulfilled with the time that you've invested in your past. You look back into your past and say, did I spend my time wisely? If the answer is yes, you're going to be happy. Okay, so what is the part of the equation of, okay, what makes you feel fulfilled? And I believe that's progression. You have to feel a sense of progression. Whatever it is that you're applying yourself to, you have to feel like you progress along the way. I think that's kind of what humans are ultimately meant for, is to progress. Now, it's a subjective word, and I intend it to be subjective. You just have to feel progression. So anyway, we want something in our weekly report. Again, it could be video or it could be the written style where you're communicating to some degree your emotion, and it's not meant to be super cheesy. I know it could come off that way, and if you don't take it seriously, then it's going to be cheesy because it's not going to have any value. But if you don't vent your frustrations, then you're going to become toxic, and you're only doing it to yourself. We're building the systems so that everyone can be super fucking happy, super duper passionate and fulfilled. And as our profitability grows, we're also all going to live in mega abundance, have fuck tons of money. But it's up to you to take responsibility to create that for yourself. We can create the systems, we can create the process, we can create the culture, the organizational structure, but it's on you to leverage what we've put in front of you, to take it seriously and use it, even if it's outside of your regular norm. These are probably boundaries that are worth pushing for yourself in that case. Because if you do, then you're going to be super fucking happy. And if it doesn't work, then we're going to keep on changing our systems until we are. Because the bottom line of NOVAEO is happiness. It's not profit. The profit will come. I'm 100% certain of that. So anyway, I think I pretty much nailed everything about this reporting system. I know I jumped all over the place. We'll have something written and more clearly communicated for you guys, but just know for now that we're going to start this next week. Even if it's a shit show, we need to start this. So it'll be this coming Monday, next week, is going to be your first, it'll start off being on Loom, your first Loom video doing this reporting system, which means prior to Monday, all of your tasking, all of it, has to have like soft, hard, medium, or reminder written into the title. LJ, maybe we can clearly show SOP what like an example title of where because we should probably have like exact placement, and then also the projected time that it should, like a task should take. 100% of it should be like that before Monday. And if your Asana still sucks, if you're still one of those people that just like put like 3 different tasks in your Asana and it's like the same repeating tasks with the exact same amount of time that perfectly equals 40 hours a week, you're not going to succeed in this system, and you're going to create frustration. If not in anyone else, you'll create frustration in me. And you don't want to do that because I'm in a super giving mode right now. I'm trying to figure out all these kinds of ways to make everything super awesome. So if you create frustration for me, I'm going to write you off and be like, you know what? I don't give a fuck about being in giving mode for that person. They're not investing themselves into this sweet ass idealistic culture that I'm trying to build. Fuck that person. Not really. I don't speak like this. So anyway, invest yourself in these pieces. I'm a person that tends to not invest myself in planning. I invest myself significantly in reflection, not much in planning. So this kind of stuff would be difficult for me, but I'm telling you, I know that there's value, so it needs to happen. So if this stuff is weird for you, give it a shot for a few weeks, see if it becomes habit. It probably will. And then, again, I'm always looking for feedback from you guys about the systems that we create in general, like the culture, all of them. Always looking for feedback, because if we don't have 100% happiness on the team once we're finished with these systems, the systems have to keep evolving until we have that. And I literally mean 100% happiness. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to be happy every single day, but your general feeling of being in the NOVAEO community is, yeah, I'm really grateful. I can't, like, this is a dream come true. I can't believe this exists. I'm making shit tons of money. I have so much freedom. Everyone's so inspiring. There's so much positivity here. And I feel like I have a bigger voice than I have even in my own personal life. That's what we're looking for. Sweet.